The Financial Times reports that Vladimir Putin has offered to freeze Russia's invasion of Ukraine along the current front lines. Meanwhile, as you just heard, Secretary of State Rubio and Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, they pulled out of peace talks in London, and Vice President Vance just threatened to walk away from the negotiations. Roll tape.
We've issued a very explicit proposal to both the Russians and the Ukrainians, and it's time for them to either say yes or for the United States to walk away from this process.
All right, joining me now is retired Lieutenant Colonel James Carafano. James, if peace talks are at an impasse, Trump is not going to be happy, is he?
No, but I would also say it's a negotiation. So deadlines, this is it, we're over, I'm walking away, we're done here. That might be Tuesday, and then on Wednesday, Putin says, oh yeah, never mind, let's just do a deal, right? So I don't think necessarily it means the end of it. I also don't think necessarily that saying, well, I'm done with the peace process because it's going nowhere, means the United States walks away from Ukraine. I mean, that to me doesn't make a lot of sense. First of all, the Europeans are increasingly doing more. So America's pressure on the Europeans to step up and do their job, that's actually working. If you completely walk away and it turns into Afghanistan, that you don't need that. And the other thing is, look, the president wants global stability. Now is not the time to create massive uncertainty in Ukraine, not to mention a free and independent Ukraine is in the U.S. interest. So I don't think the United States necessarily either walks away from Ukraine or it takes its heel off the Russians, because the Russians are feeling a lot of pressure on a lot of fronts from the United States, and I don't think that's going to stop.
What are the odds that by midsummer, let's say the end of July, the shooting has stopped, the bombing has stopped, the killing has stopped, and there is a genuine ceasefire in Ukraine and Russia? By end of July, what are the odds we'll get there?
Well, that's a reasonable scenario for the very obvious reason that both Russia and Ukraine are near strategic exhaustion. Can they both put forces in the field and fight? Yes. Can they achieve their maximalist goals? No. Does thing get any better for either side the longer the war drags on? No. So that's a reasonable outcome. The question is, does Putin take that deal, or does he spin the wheel and say, no, I'm going to fight for another year and see if this just all falls apart against me? Which is, you can do that, but that means either one, everybody just completely walks away and abandons Ukraine. I don't know about that. Or two, you just wind up next year in a worse place than you are now. Look what Trump just did with China in terms of lowering the ratcheting, what he did on the push out, the 90-day extension on the tariff deals. You know, he's disruptive, he gets people's attention, but then he likes things to settle down and get to reasonable outcomes. And I kind of wonder if that's not the strategy in Ukraine as well.
This is fascinating, but I've got one more for you, James. Sorry, I don't. I'm out of time. I'm terribly sorry, James Carafano.
The answer is no.
I'm very sorry. It just switched on me just like that. That happens. James, thanks for being here anyway.